Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised 12th edition section on conventions. As commonly understood in parliamentary law and as used in this book, the word convention refers to an assembly of delegates other than a permanently constituted public lawmaking body, who are usually chosen specially for each session as representatives of the constituent units or subdivisions within a larger group of people, to sit as single deliberative body acting in the name of the entire group. The most common type of convention is that of an established state or national society in which the delegates are selected by and from among the members of each local unit. Other terms by which a convention may be described in some organizations include Congress, Conference, Convocation, General Assembly, House of Delegates, and House of Representatives. 58.2. The term House of Delegates or House of Representatives is often applied, particularly in the case of learned or professional associations, to distinguish the voting body of delegates from large numbers of other members of the constituent units who come to the convention to attend seminars, workshops, educational or social activities, or the like. In some societies, also, House of Delegates or House of Representatives may describe a body of delegates who, instead of being elected only for a convention session, are elected for a fixed term during which they hold sessions from time to time as the bylaws may prescribe. 58.3. Conventions vary in size, duration, and complexity of operation. A relatively small state society may hold a one-day convention consisting of 2 or 3 meetings at which all delegates are present. A week's convention of a national scientific or educational association, on the other hand, may be divided into a number of specialized sections, meeting separately at the same time with only a few meetings when the entire body of delegates gathers in one hall. 58.4. In addition, a convention is sometimes called for the purpose of forming an association or federation, or like a mass meeting. 53. It may be convened to draw interested parties or representatives of interested organizations together in acting upon a particular problem. 58.5. This chapter is limited to the features common to most conventions and relates principally to the convention of an established society. For variations of procedure applying to other types of conventions, see 60. 58.6. In the case of an established state, regional, or national society composed of constituent units, the bylaws, see 2A through 13, 56.33, especially 56.38, or other governing instrument of the association or parent body should authorize a periodic convention, define its powers and duties, fix its quorum, specify its voting members, prescribe the qualifications of its delegates and alternates, the basis of determining their number and the method of electing them, specify when, how, and to whom the call notice of the convention is to be sent, and make such provision as the particular convention may require for its organization and operation. 58.7. Basic provision for the voting body of members may be worded in the bylaws as appropriate to the particular organization. For example, as follows. The voting members of the state convention shall be the state officers, including members of the executive board of the state association, the president, or in his absence, the vice president of each club within the association, and the elected delegates of each club. 58.8. In addition, the bylaws at the level on which the convention is held should prescribe 1. The conditions for a constituent unit to be in good standing for purposes of the right to representation, commonly including a minimum membership requirement, and 2. The number of delegates to which a unit shall be entitled depending on its size, usually by specifying, for example, that each unit shall be represented by its president, plus 1 additional delegate if the unit has more than a certain number of members, or 2 additional delegates if the unit has more than twice that number of members, and so on. 58.9. The bylaws at the level at which the convention is held should also provide for the election of alternates as described in 58.13 through 50. 58.10. To avoid a change of officers during the convention, the bylaws should provide that newly elected officers shall take up their duties at the close of the convention. See 56.27. Convention members and alternates. 58.11. Ways in which voting membership comes about. Voting membership in a convention of an established society generally comes about in one of the following ways. 1. Through being an accredited delegate elected by a constituent body, especially to act as its authorized representative, or one of several representatives in a particular convention. 2. Through provision in the bylaws, as in many organizations, that the president or chief officer, or in his absence, the vice president, of each constituent local unit shall be the delegate or one of the delegates. 3. Through being an incumbent elective officer of the organization on the level at which the convention is held. For example, an officer of a state society in a state convention, where the officers of the state society, as listed in the bylaws, are ex officio, the officers of the convention as well as members of it, irrespective of the number of delegates that the local unit to which an officer belongs is entitled to elect. Or 4. Through being an accredited elected alternate and replacing, at the time of the convention, a delegate who is unable to attend or who withdraws from registered status. 58.12. Filling of vacancies arising in a delegation. If the president of a constituent unit is unable to be present at the convention of an established society, his place there is taken by the vice president, or by the second, third, or ranking available vice president if necessary, and if there are such officers, just as for any other duty in which the vice president acts in the president's place. If the vice president is himself an elected delegate, but takes the president's place, the vice president's original position as an elected delegate is filled by an elected alternate in the manner explained below, just as when any other elected delegate does not serve. 58.13. Provision for alternates. To ensure as complete representation at the convention as possible, the bylaws at the convention level should provide that each unit shall elect a certain number of alternates, frequently equal to the number of delegates, to maintain a uniform standard of representation. The qualifications for election as an alternate, which may include membership in good standing for a prescribed number of years, are made the same as for a delegate. 5814. Alternates normally are elected with a designated order in which they will be called to serve, if available, as vacancies arise in the delegation of their constituent unit. When a unit has more than one delegate, an elected alternate, other than the vice president, is not associated with any particular delegate. The vacancy that occurs first in point of time, except one involving the president, when the vice president is able to serve in his stead, is filled by the first elected alternate or the ranking one available, and so on. 5815. In cases where the individual delegates within a unit's delegation represent particular areas or groups, it may sometimes be desirable to make exception to the foregoing rule by providing in the bylaws at the convention level for the pairing of each alternate with a specific delegate. The disadvantage of such a system arises when both the particular delegate and his only alternate are unable to attend the convention, thus depriving a constituent unit of part of the representation to which it is entitled. 5816. Status of seating of alternates replacement procedure. Alternates registered as such are usually provided with badges of a different color or shape from those of delegates and are seated in sections apart from them. In large conventions, assigned seats in the assembly hall ordinarily can be guaranteed only to the voting body. When an alternate is officially registered by the Credentials Committee, 5914.5, 5925, as taking the place of an elected delegate, however, he is supplied with a delegate's badge and becomes a voting delegate with the same duties and privileges as if he were originally so elected. 5817. If an alternate is to replace a delegate who has registered, proper evidence of that delegate's withdrawal from such status must be presented to the Credentials Committee, and the alternate must be registered as the new delegate before he can sit or vote as a member of the convention. It is the duty of any registered delegate who ends his presence at the convention to see that his departure is promptly reported to the Credentials Committee and to whatever authority is concerned with locating the proper accredited alternate, if one is available. Unless the rules of the body provide otherwise, no alternate or other person can substitute for a delegate who remains registered. In other words, a delegate's temporary absence from the convention hall does not entitle an alternate to make motions, speak in debate, or cast the delegate's vote, even with the delegate's authorization, unless a rule of the body permits this procedure. 5818. Duties of delegates. When a member of a constituent unit has accepted election as a delegate, he has the obligation to attend the convention with such expense allowance as the unit may provide. He should not leave it to an alternate to serve in his place except for serious reason. At the convention, the delegate has the duty to be present at the business meetings and to be prepared on returning from the convention to present to his unit an information report of what transpired. A delegate is free to vote as he sees fit on questions at the convention, except as his constituent unit may have instructed him in regard to particular matters scheduled for consideration. Caucuses, 5819. Prior to or during a convention, members of a delegation may need or wish to meet as a group to decide how they will act with reference to certain matters to come before the convention. A meeting of this kind is usually called a caucus, unless instructed otherwise by its parent society or unit. Such a caucus is governed by the rules of procedure applicable to committees. 50. Since the delegation is in effect a committee to represent and act at the convention for the constituent society or unit that chose it. If the president of a constituent society, or in his absence the vice president, is automatically a delegate to a convention, he usually acts as a chairman of his delegation. Otherwise, the delegation for the case of any other committee. 13, 17, 18. Sometimes 5820. Sometimes caucuses are held of different groupings of delegates, as for example, all delegates from a certain district, territory, or other geographic area as defined by the organization, and they are similarly. This plane is not going to go there. I'll start back at 5820. Sometimes caucuses are held of different groupings of delegates, as, for example, all delegates from a certain district, territory, or other geographic area as defined by the organization, and they are similarly governed by the rules generally applicable to committees. 5821. As in the case of any committee, in the absence of a superior rule to the contrary, a constituent society or unit can instruct its delegation, although this is not always a good practice in ordinary societies. Such instructions are binding upon the delegation to the extent that the convention's presiding officer and other officials have a duty to enforce instructions of which they have been properly and officially notified. Such instructions, for example, frequently require a delegation to take a position for or against a measure expected to come before the convention, or to vote for certain candidates. As stated above, the delegates are free to vote as they see fit, except where an instruction has been given. But a society can, by instructing its delegation, bind it to vote as a unit. That is, to cast all of its votes in accord with the decision of the majority of the delegation on all issues, on a particular class of business, or on certain matters to be acted on by the convention. 5822. The term caucus is also sometimes applied to a similar meeting of all the known or admitted partisans of a particular position on an important issue in a convention or any other deliberative assembly who meet to plan strategy toward a desired result within the assembly. Such a meeting may be held on the presumed informal understanding that those who attend will follow the decisions of the caucus. established society. 59.1. Most conventions must operate on a closely controlled schedule and transact a large amount of business quickly, often with rented facilities available only for a pre-arranged amount or length of time, and with each added day of meetings entailing considerable expense both to the association and to the delegates personally. Maximum effort toward a well-organized convention is therefore essential. Advanced preparation, 59.2. The work of organizing and preparing for a convention normally begins weeks or months in advance and involves many committees under the general direction of the officers and the board of the association. 59.3. The principal parliamentary functions most directly connected with the formal organization of the convention itself are performed by 3 committees, each of which has been appointed by the president or the board as prescribed in the bylaws. These 3 committees are: 1. The Credentials Committee, which prepares and certifies to the convention the list of officers, delegates, and alternates that it has registered after finding them entitled to accreditation. 2. The Committee on Standing Rules, which drafts rules of operating procedure specially required for the particular convention. And 3. The Program Committee, which works out a convention program combining a suitable order of business, 41, with special features designed to promote and develop the association or society as a whole. Because the duties of these committees are exacting, a member should never be appointed to one of them for any other reason than his ability in the field involved. 59.4. In addition, depending on the size of the convention, one or more committees concerned with the necessary physical arrangements, such as securing the hall, hotel accommodations, and related services, should be appointed. If a single committee is responsible for all of these matters, it may be known as the Convention Arrangements Committee. 59.5. Another important committee that usually works before as well as during the convention is the Resolutions Committee. This committee screens and recommends appropriate action on resolutions and original, as distinct from incidental, main motions to come before the convention. 59.6. The duties of the convention committees are more fully explained in the succeeding portions of this chapter. 59.7. Each of the regular standing committees of the association, in consultation with the presiding officer, the executive body or board, and the program committee, should also carefully plan the presentation and management of the convention business, that is the particular committee's concern. 59.8. A pre-convention meeting of the board of the association is often held in the convention city a day or more in advance of the convention opening. A number of decisions bearing on business to come before the convention may be made at this meeting. Services of a parliamentarian. 59.9. A key consultant in the preparation for a convention should be the parliamentarian, who should be engaged well in advance. It is desirable that this person be a professional. The more seasoned and actual operating experience within organizations, the better. Although he has the duty of giving parliamentary advice and opinions at convention meetings, where he should be seated next to the presiding officer, the parliamentarian's most important work may well be performed before the convention opens. See 47, 46 through 54. During the period of preparation and while the convention is in progress, he should serve as the principal advisor to the president, the officers, and the committee chairmen regarding management of the convention as it relates to the actual transaction of business. The chairman of the Credentials Committee, the Committee on Standing Rules, the Program Committee, the Resolutions Committee, the Elections Committee, if there is one, and the standing committees who are to present business to the convention should all consult with the parliamentarian during this time, and it may be advisable that he should attend certain meetings of these committees. The parliamentarian should always be present at the pre-convention board meetings mentioned above. Formal organization procedure at the convention, 5910. Before a convention can transact any other business, it must officially form itself into a single voting body, which is done at the first business meeting. Preliminary ceremonies, whether at the commencement of the convention or at the beginning of each day, are not regarded as business. A separate formal opening of inspirational nature can be held, if desired, before the convention is officially organized. When the assembly of delegates of an established society has been so organized in accordance with the bylaws or other governing rules as described below, it then acts as and in the name of the whole society and may be referred to as, quote, the 10th annual convention of the National Society of blank, end quote, or as common formerly, quote, the National Society of blank in convention assembled, end quote. 5911. The official organization of the convention is brought about by the separate consideration and adoption of the reports of three committees mentioned above: the Credentials Committee, the Committee on Standing Rules, and the Program Committee, in that order. 5912. As each report comes up for consideration, it is presented to the convention by a reporting member, normally the respective committee chairman. This person concludes his report with a statement that, quote, by direction of the committee, end quote, he moves its adoption, unless he is not a voting member of the convention, in which case anyone who is such a voting member can make this motion. A convenient practice is for the recording secretary of the convention or a qualified member of the committee to do so. No second is required if the motion is made by a member of the committee. If no one offers the motion promptly, the chair can call for it or can assume it by stating, for example, quote, the question is on the adoption of the report of the program committee, end quote. 5913. Each of these committee reports is debatable and amendable. In an ordinary convention of a society, however, debate or proposals for amendment of any of them seldom occur, and the reports are likely to be adopted without dissenting vote, if the committees have done their work well. The vote required for their adoption is a majority for the reports of the Credentials Committee and the Program Committee, and normally a 2/3 vote for that of the Committee on Standing Rules, as explained in 5934 through 35. With the adoption of these three separate reports, the convention is officially organized for conducting business. I'm going to stop at Credentials Committee 5914. You can stop it. I'll pick up there afterwards.